Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a what to look for when you're buying a used BMW E60. Now as you guys know, I've been doing quite a few of the videos. I've just done a what to look for when buying a used E46 and what to look for when buying a used E61. They'll be in my videos on the end screen, but what we're going to do today is show you around my normal E60, the saloon one, and show you what to look for before buying an E60. Okay guys, so the first thing you're going to want to look at is the rear. Now the rear on these cars, if it's an M Sport, it will have the diffuser. Make sure that's not cracked, as that can be very expensive. A lot of people end up changing them to carbon fiber ones on them, so that's not really an issue. If you're going to be buying it and changing it anyway, you can change it to that. The next thing you're going to want to look for on the rear here is the tail lights. Now they like to get water inside them whenever someone jet washes them or cleans them, and when they do get water in them, I'll just open the boot right now, you'll see they'll end up flickering. Now the bulbs will go out and it will cause you a voltage monitoring alert, and usually to do the sockets drying out, you just have to spray contact cleaner in there and clean them out usually, because the bulbs end up giving a voltage monitoring too low on the screen and popping up saying it's a failure, which is not. The next thing you're going to want to look for, and I always do this on every BMW I come and check, is to make sure the locking wheel nut is in its place. If you've got alloys, it's a most common problem that a lot of the old owners never give you the locking wheel nut or end up keeping it. Always make sure it is kept up here in this section. That's where it should always be, and always make sure the toolkit's full and everything's in there. If you ever find signs that it's been used, it's not really a good sign. It means people have been playing about the tools in there. Every one I usually get is usually full and untouched, and the locking wheel nut's usually in its place in the UK here. I don't know about in the US, but you just want to make sure. Now if yours is in before 2006, you'll go under the boot carpet. Now as you will see here, the modules usually sit underneath this area right here, underneath this flap. Now most people won't have, if you've got 06 or 07 up pre-LC, I didn't have the modules in the boot, mine doesn't have them, but if yours is 05, you will still have the modules in the boot here. Now if you go and watch my videos, you'll know how to relocate them modules that do sit under the boot. If you've got an 05, 04 or 53, you run them up here and run them into this area out of the way of the boot area, because water comes through the sides here when you wash it and it makes its way into the boot area. The next problem is water getting into the battery compartment, because the drain plugs ain't pulled. Water does get through it and gets into the battery area. Just put your hand in the battery area itself underneath here and put your hand in the battery and make sure that there's no water getting in there, because they do get in, and when it gets in, you've got to just pull the drain plugs there. That's another common problem. The next one is the boot wiring. Now as you guys know, the boot wiring runs into this hatch right here. It runs here and runs up on the boot wiring itself. Now the boot wiring ends up threading and you'll realise your boot will not open. If that happens, that's a common problem. All you have to do is get access to the boot usually and get the wiring and repair it. Same as on the E61, but it happens on the top. Here it happens running through here. The wiring runs through this pole here and you just have to get to it and repair it. The next thing is the rubber. These rubbers come off, the rubber seals, which is for the water. This one's already coming off on my one. I've got to replace it, but it's not easy to find another one of them. You've got to learn to replace this one as well. When you do, make sure you replace it, because if it perishes, you'll be left without a rubber seal. Next one is going to be the aerial itself, the shark fin antenna. Now that controls for the Bluetooth to get the best network possible. When that ain't working, that will cause you to have a lot of problems with your Bluetooth module not working, and also your radio reception. Now that piece right here connects to the diversity antenna in the interior underneath here. You pull this flap down, the diversity antenna sits above here in a casing underneath this headlining. You just got to pull this cover down, which is held on by clips, and then pull this down. Then you want to release the T30 bolt right here underneath that airbag one and pull this trim forward, and you'll probably locate the diversity antenna, and it just unplugs from here. It bolts up to the bolt here and holds the ground, and it just connects by the wire into that circuit. When that goes bad, you end up losing radio reception, and you'll get poor signal from your remote central locking as well. It's a common problem, as I showed you on the E61. Another thing you want to check for is the parking sensors. Now mine, what I did with them, because as you guys know they usually fail quite often, most common cause that is water getting in the parking sensors itself around here from when they're being jet washed. A way to avoid that, and what I did with this car when I got it, is I put silicone all round the inside of the parking sensor and then stuck it back in, and it stopped water getting in between it. That's a very good way to stop water, and since then I haven't had no problems with my parking sensors. Another thing on these is you're going to want to look for is make sure all the door locks work. I know it's not too much of a common problem on these, like the E39s and E53s where they're breaking, because actually they're a lot better on the E60, but you just want to make sure they're all working. The next common problem is going to be the rear cigarette lighters. Now most people get in this car and realise that they don't work. It's common across all these cars. It's going to be the fuse in the boot. Now a lot of people don't know why they blow. The reason these two blow here is usually because people are trying to use them two and that one at the front. You cannot use all three at the same time. You have to only use two or one. You cannot use all three. It's a common problem that people get their kids in the car, try and use all three, and you cannot do that. It draws too much power from the car and they end up blowing the circuit. God knows why BMW never put an instruction manual on that. That's just the way they are on these. So that's another thing you're going to want to check. Next thing you're going to want to check on this car is to make sure that all the paintwork is good on it and it hasn't been resprayed or it's not been in an accident like mine has. If it's got the M Sport seals, make sure they're all okay. Make sure all the tyres are fine, lights are fine, and obviously just make sure there's no discolouring to the headlights itself. Another thing you're going to want to check for, guys, is the fuel cap. Now you want to make sure this opens and that you can turn that fuel cap freely and it's not holding pressure, otherwise that will cause you to run lean code. So you just want to check in there and make sure it's not rusted up. These cars don't usually suffer with rust, but you just want to be checking all these things anyway. As I say, the majority of these problems on this car are all really cosmetics on the outside. They don't really suffer too much cosmetics, but when they do, it's usually to do with the wheels, parking sensors and pieces of things like that. Moving into the interior now, and what you have in here is the iDrive system. Now when you get in the iDrive system, you're going to want to check all your Bluetooth modules. As you see, I've got it on the oil level to show you guys, but that's the way you want to check your oil level on the iDrive. Now when you get in these cars, this is what I did when I bought this. I checked the oil. That's when you know if it's got a valve cover leak, when it's idling, or kind of CCV problem. Now as you can see, mine's on the full. Now only to get to that, you're going to have to press the iDrive controller in, press info services and go into service, and then go over to engine oil. Now that's another problem you want to check for. Another thing you're going to want to check for is to get into the service manual. You're going to want to make sure everything's up to date on these cars. There's a common problem that people don't check everything. Then you just want to go over from engine oil to status and check everything on the iDrive itself and make sure everything's okay. And when it was reset, usually people don't have a diagnostic. People that own these cars don't have that kind of equipment, so they don't end up resetting it themselves. They just get a garage to do it, which means a job's been done on the car. The next thing you're going to want to do is go into your eye and you're going to want to check your settings, and again you're going to want to go down to check the Bluetooth settings and check the Bluetooth. Now if that tick is off and it won't let you turn it on, it usually means that your Bluetooth module's knackered. That's usually what happens, is the Bluetooth module itself won't let you turn it on because the Bluetooth module is completely gone. If it does let you turn it on, you should know how to pair the phone. You just want to go into phone and you'll find it, pair new telephone, and you just can easily find it just by the Bluetooth settings itself. Another thing you're going to want to check on this is the navigation. Now the navigation on these, it will tell you everything. As you see, my navigation works. So the next thing you're going to want to do as well is you're going to want to go into your climate and make sure when you try and test the aircon, thinking the aircon ain't regassed, it's a good way to get a good cost down if you're buying it from a trader. They don't know much about cars. You can tell them the aircon don't leave regas, can you have money off? But usually the most common cause of that is that people have the heat up setting right here, and they don't, and you've got to turn it down, like as you can see here, to the cold to turn the aircon on. You will not get cold air if this is on like this on the hot. It just won't happen. So you have to make sure that everything you do is on the right setting on the climate, otherwise you will not get cold air. The next thing you're going to want to check on this car is if it's got electric steering wheel like mine has. You want to check that it goes up and down, which mine does, as you can see. Mine works perfectly. It goes in, it goes out, it goes back in. And that's the one thing you want to check, is that it just all fully works on this car. It is a common problem that it goes wrong. The stalk, as you'll know, Nathan's one, it don't work, but my one does work. The next thing you're going to want to check is that all heated seats work. Now on the E60 ones, I think it was before 06, it had a problem here where it would be causing the heated seats, it will blow, it will cause it to burn out underneath the seat and start smelling like it's burning. That's another problem you want to be aware of. Usually the passenger side causes that, where it causes a burning smell from underneath the seats. But it's not too bad on the E60s. I've been using them on this car and I haven't had that smell, but usually you get that problem a lot on the E61. It was happened on my E61 where underneath the seat, my friend decided to turn it on one day and it started smelling like burning. It burnt the resistor out under there and actually needed to set the whole car on fire. So something you need to be careful of, that if you smell a burning smell, turn it straight off and get it off. The next thing you're going to want to check as well is the CD player and the nav system. Make sure it's taking discs, make sure it's all working perfectly, and make sure all the climate control settings work perfectly on this car. As you know, the electrics on this are the most common cause of problem, and you want to make sure everything's working before you even think of buying the car. I advise that strongly. The next thing you're going to want to check is just make sure all the steering wheel controls work, make sure the car is idling fine, make sure everything's running fine on the combi. There's no tamper dot in between the middle of the mileage and the trip meter right there. You just want to make sure everything's proper on this car and that it's got no issues whatsoever. The next one you're going to want to check again is obviously make sure the key's going in the cassette and make sure it's all functional. If your car's got a heads-up display like this one has right there, you're going to want to check that that's working. So obviously to get that working, you're just going to press that button there, and you'll probably see it pop up on the dash right there, which it's working, as you can see. So you're just going to make sure that's all fully working. Make sure if you've got xenons that the bi-adaptive xenon's working, so move the steering wheel. If you've got xenons, put the lights on. Check that they're adjusting when you turn the steering wheel, because they turn by when you turn the steering wheel. Make sure the cornering lights are working. If you've got the LCI version, it will have cornering lights which turn with the steering wheel, like as I'm saying. So just make sure they all fully work. Another common problem on these is the cup holders break. Everyone knows that. They're very easy to replace, as you'll see as I'll pop them open now. And then all it is the Torx bolts right here underneath these caps. You just want to take them out and then repair them. It's not very hard to replace. They're quite simple to replace on this car as well. If you've got the old style climate control, which isn't really called climate control, this one only is. This is called dual zone climate control. Then you're just going to want to make sure, again, everything's working. It's the same as like it is on this. It's not much different. Make sure your parking sensors are working. Make sure the DTC light is going on and off when it should by checking it. You can turn it on, turn it off, as you'll see right here. It's off, so DTC is restricted. So, and now I'll turn it off. That's the way you want it to be checking it and make sure everything's fully working on that side on the car itself. So now what we're going to do, guys, we're going to move to the engine. Okay guys, so now we're at the engine, and now the first thing you're going to want to check on these is to make sure that this oil filter housing gasket isn't leaking. Now when I bought this, thankfully this one wasn't leaking, but it is a common problem and it does leak on these cars. And when it does, it goes all down your engine block and can go onto your pulleys. As a lot of people know, it derails your pulleys and derails your belt and can cause a complete engine catastrophic failure on these cars. The next one on these is the Vanos solenoids. Now, as most of you know, I replaced mine with genuine BMW ones, and this car runs perfectly ever since. So make sure you don't suffer any problems with them when you buy this car. Just make sure they don't have a problem, because you'll know if they've got a problem, because it will have rough running, rough starting, just completely rough idling the lot on these cars. The next one on these is going to be the valve cover gasket. Now on these, as you know, they do leak and they do cause a leak, and when they do, most garages charge an arm and leg to fix it. I've got a lot of videos up showing you how to repair that. It is a very simple job on this car. It's not hard at all. I can do it now very quickly on this car, and it is a DIY job you can do at home. When they leak all down the side here, and they'll leak out of this side as well and probably leak onto the belt. So be careful of that and be cautious of that when you're buying this car. That ain't leaking, because it's still money that at the end of the day you've got to spend. And when you're buying a car, you try and avoid getting it with as less problems as possible. The next one you're going to see is the CCV on these. Now the CCV ends up rupturing, sticking, and causing the car to burn a lot of oil. So you want to make sure that your one is not ruptured, and if it is, it's not an expensive part to replace, but it's actually quite easy on this. Again, I've got a video up showing you how to replace the intake CCV on these as well and take the intake manifold off. So it's not a hard job, and like I say, when it does go, it does end up rupturing and blowing the valve cover, and that's when you usually know when the CCV's gone, if your valve cover's blown and leaking oil, because that is stuck and end up putting pressure on the crankcase and popping the valve cover gasket. The next one is the disvalves itself. Now they fail, and when they fail, you on the 530i like this one, you will lose a lot of torque, low down and up the top. They have the top disser and the lower disser down here in the manifold. Obviously mine's a 3-stage manifold, and as you know, when they fail, they are a big pitter, and they can also go into the cylinder head. They lose the pins, they end up coming off the flap and getting into manifold. If you have any kind of rattling issues with your disvalves on these, the disvalves itself, the flap comes off and rattles around inside the manifold. Usually they don't get stuck in the combustion chamber. It's usually the little rubber piece that holds the pin on, and usually it blows out the back of the exhaust when you rev it too hard. So it's not the end of the world, but sometimes it can damage your cylinders and your cylinder walls. The next one on these is, as you know, the water neck right here for the water pump that runs down to the water pump. You want to be changing that and buy a new one, because that can get all clogged up and stopped, and then that will cause your car to overheat. The next one, as you'll know from my videos, is I replaced all the drive belt tensioners and the pulleys and the belts itself. That's another common problem on these. I changed it because obviously I changed the oil filter housing, and that's been changed and no problem. You want to change them for peace of mind, as most people don't ever replace them. As I say, the majority of the parts on this is why people don't replace it, because it's so expensive, and BMW and any garage charge an arm and a leg the moment they hear the name BMW. So just be careful of that and make sure you change all them. Next one I'd be careful of is the air filter. Now I've got a performance air filter on this. You don't have to have it. I've got a panel filter, but on these cars it makes all the difference to have it on these cars, especially on the 530i. I wouldn't recommend it on any car without a 3-stage manifold. You're going to get no power gain. Another common problem in these is when you take the manifold off, be careful of this MAF sensor at the back here. A lot of people don't realise that. They end up pulling it up, and then it ends up snapping that plug. So be very careful with that. You make sure you disconnect that one if you really take the manifold out. The next one on these is going to be the thermostat and the water pump. Now, I'm just going to say this because a lot of people don't believe me. My car is on 160,000 miles on the original water pump. That does not mean in the US you guys can keep going and not change your water pump. That just means that our parts here are checked thoroughly and we have good quality control before our parts are released. In the US, I don't think you guys do, and that's the problem why you guys cars fail a lot more than ours. This car is on an original water pump. It's never been changed. I'm gonna do it because I can't push it anymore. But the whole thing is with these cars, when BMW made that electric water pump, they made it in mind that it was meant to last the lifetime of the car, the same as they say for the gearbox, which the lifetime is about 100,000 miles, which is normal. Anything over that, they don't expect probably most people to keep the car over that. But that's the way they built it, so you didn't have to change it, and it's another less maintenance part. It is got to be changed, and mine is due over change, and I'm going to change it. As you know here, if you see on my previous video on the E46 with the water pump thermostat as well, that had never been changed, and that was still on an original water pump as well. So back onto this now, and what you want to be making sure is that obviously your coolant reservoir isn't cracked as well, because it is a common problem, and these do crack, and when they crack, obviously you'll lose coolant and the car will overheat. Another problem I'm going to stress to you guys is do not keep bleeding your coolant system. You do not have to bleed your coolant system. I asked this to a lot of people, why are you even bleeding the coolant system? The only time you would ever bleed the coolant system is if you had a coolant leak and you have to re-top it up with coolant. Don't keep changing your coolant like it needs changing. Coolant does not ever need changing. I don't know, unless you've had a mixture of head gasket failure, and then you've got a serious problem. So stop changing your coolant thinking, oh, it's dirty. Coolant does not need servicing. Anyone who tells you that is chatting absolute crap. Coolant doesn't need coolant. It doesn't change, not like an oil. It doesn't lose its lubrication or nothing. So leave the coolant the way it is. Stop bleeding your water pumps and your water pumps and your thermostat when it lasting you a long time. The next thing on this is the brake lines. They end up rusting very bad. That's another common problem, and I've just had mine done. As you'll see from my previous videos, I failed MOT on the brake lines underneath the car. They rust at the rear, and it's a common problem on all BMWs, as most people know that rust is a big issue on these cars, as I mentioned on my E46 video. But they do rust, not so much the body, but these running to the rear usually rust the most. The next common problem on these is the AUC sensor for the aircon. When people don't have their aircon working, that's usually the cause of many of the problems that stops the aircon working. A lot of people don't believe that, but this little sensor here can cause a lot of problems with your air conditioning. And you'll think you need it regassed, it'll be regassed and it still won't work. The next one is underneath this pollen filter housing, and when you take this cover off, these cars like to get water in them. They like to get water underneath them in the brake servo. So in the US, it will be on that side of your car. In the UK, it's on our driver's side, the brake servo, and our ECU box is on the passenger side, which is a good thing, so we don't suffer with that. But as you guys will probably know, water gets in all these compartments in the pollen filter, underneath the pollen filter housing. Nobody knows why. If you go and watch my videos, there's a drain plug that you've got to pull. There's two of them actually in both sides, and you want to pull them out so the water can escape. And they do escape, and all you got to do is just get like a little hanger, a metal hanger, and poke it down to clear the holes. That's all you have to do. It's very easy. Next thing you're going to want to look for on these is make sure your coolant hoses are fine as well, because that's another common problem. They fail, and when they fail, that will cause you to overheat. Next thing on these is going to be, as I say, oil. Make sure you change your oil on these. That's another common problem on these. People go extension on these and make it go all the way to like 15k. Not changing their oil. You cannot do that on these cars. Not what hell, no chance in hell. 2,000, 5,000 is the most you can go on without doing an oil change. So obviously guys, as you've seen all the video now, and they're the most common problems to look for on the BMW when buying a used BMW E60. When you go to buy one, just check them problems on this car. There's not many problems really on these engines to look for, apart from, like I say, the valve solenoids, the water pump, thermostat. If that's been changed already, you've got a very good car already there. And if the oil filter housing ain't been done, it's very easy to do yourself. You can watch my videos and go back to that, and you can see how easy it is to be done. CCV is not a big job. Most people who do love their cars and do look after them will have had that done already. Just be aware of that as well. If it ain't been done, you will be changing it. And the valve cover, most people who do buy a BM end up changing it because it needs doing regardless. Obviously, the next thing you're just going to want to look for is obviously the gearbox. As I tell everyone, when you drive the car, you will only notice that. There's no point telling you anything regardless of that. If the gearbox throws a cog light, just drive it, make sure it goes through all the gears. Use the kick down, use the sport mode, use the manual override, go through all the gears, make sure they're fully working, make sure it ain't stomping when it changes gear, make sure it ain't kicking into gear, make sure it's just working fully perfect, make sure it changes gear smoothly. Providing it changes gear smoothly, you'll have no other problems. Make sure all the electrics work. As I told you, electric mirrors, if you've got a heads-up display, check that. Just check all the electrics on the car. As you know, E60 is very prone to electric failure. The best tool you can take with you, as I sell it, and as you guys know I use it a lot, is IDrive. IDrive is your best friend with any kind of newer car from E60 upwards. It's your best friend, and it will save you a lot of aggro, and later you will know what car you're buying. You will know if you're buying a dud or a good one. Just buy IDrive. IDrive will tell you everything that's wrong with that car, and you know to avoid it or buy it. I highly recommend it because of that reason. There's no way I could be able to run any kind of E60 without it, and that's my personal opinion. These cars do need updates. That's another problem with them. As I told you on E46, update these modules. This changes the whole car. When I bought this car, it was never the same as what it was until I updated it, and when I've updated it, this has changed the whole car. My E60, like I say, I think it's been the longest car I've had. I usually don't keep the cars this long, but this E60, on the other hand, I've kept the longest. I've had it nearly 8 months now, and I don't regret it a single bit owning it. Like I say, it's very hard to find one with this spec, as you guys know, but I will probably be getting another one. I'm now looking for an E30, as you guys know. I'm probably going to be buying probably an F30 as well. But that pretty much sums up what to look for when buying a used E60. There's not much to obviously look for. Obviously, the memory seats, if it's got memory seats and electric seats, as I told you, check them. Mine does. Mine fully works. The up-down function, the bolsters, sport, everything works on them. You just want to make sure they all fully work, all the electrics. It is a common problem on these that they go, and they're expensive to fix. Usually BMW didn't have so much problems on it like they did on the old cars, but they still suffer with problems on the light modules, on the CAS, as you've seen. But that's it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. This is BMW Dr. Dean here. If you ain't subscribed already, please go ahead and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.